Sir, the possibility of successfully navigating
A faith crisis?
is approximately 3,720 to 1.
Never tell me the odds.
So then, in the metaphysical sphere, the mystic is the one who feels that everything that happens is in some way harmonious, is in some way right, is in some way an integral part of the universe. Now, when we transplant or translate that into the moral sphere, the sphere of human conduct, the equivalent is this: there are no wrong feelings.
No wrong feelings.
Because everything we're talking about, in other words, we're not asking you to face the reality, we're asking you to use your imagination. We're asking you to contour your thoughts in order to produce feelings.
There are no wrong feelings.
Use your imagination, contour your thoughts in order to produce feelings.
Someone said that religion is for people who are afraid of hell, and spirituality is for people who've already been there.
Your whole countenance here as we are visiting with you is, this is hard, or I'm not doing it. And while that is the reality that maybe you've been living, it's not the whole reality. Because sometimes it isn't hard and often you are doing it. And so you just have to decide how you want to feel. When you feel a little negative emotion, if rather than saying, I need to change this thought or I need to bridge this belief, if you would say, I want to find a thought that feels better right now, right now, right now, right now. If you've adapted to not feeling good, then this isn't going to work for you.
Never tell me the odds.
This is Infants on Thrones,
Baby steps.
You want someone to preach to?
the philosophies of men,
I like magical
You
toys.
want religion, do you?
mingled with humor.
I don't believe in them.
There will be many willing to preach to you the philosophies of men mingled with
Humor. We are evolving.
Baby steps.
You can buy anything in this world of money.
Look for the good in everything. Look for the people who will set your soul free. It always seems impossible until it's done. Look for the good in everyone.
Welcome back to Infants on Thrones. I'm Glenn Ostland, and this is episode 713, Navigating a Faith Crisis in Real Time, Part 2. Now, this is my second life coaching session with Reed Christensen, and I'd like to remind you that there is a new survey to fill out on the website for any of you interested in the kinds of things that Reed and I will be discussing today. Thank you to those of you who have already filled out this survey, and if you haven't heard back from me already, you will be hearing back from me soon. Now, there seems to be a growing interest from several of you regarding group coaching, a kind of private, confidential, guided book club of sorts, a discussion group, a small online community built on vulnerability, acceptance, and trust. So look for that starting in April, and reach out to me, either through email or the survey, if that sounds like something that you want to be a part of. And stick around for the end of today's episode, as I'm including a kind of guided meditation as an extended Easter egg. Now, I'm going to make this guided meditation available just as a standalone episode on Patreon for those of you who are supporting the podcast. This is something that I put together. It's a chapter from the book Letting Go by David Hawkins, put to some meditation music that I listen to for about 20 or 30 minutes a couple times a week. And it's been really helpful for me, so I want to make it available to you as well. And now, sit back and enjoy being a fly on the wall for my second coaching session with Reed, because here we go. All right. So how was the week last week? I know you listened back to the recording and you had some criticisms of like things that you kept saying over and over again, but you've heard yourself before.
That was rough though.
Was it?
Because I did a lot more talking for one thing. So that, there was So there I go. I said,
Mm-hmm.
probably 1,000 times. So yeah, that was really annoying. In fact, my wife was listening to it. And she said, and I was on the bed holding my head in my hands, just like cringing. Every time I said, I was like, why do I have to say that after everything? So yeah,
I know I'm going to watch you now, like kind of catch yourself every time when you like instinctively want to say,
yeah,
you just got to pull it back.
That here I go again.
Uh-huh.
Listening to yourself is a fascinating thing.
Yeah.
Because my mind is trying to say something and it's just not coming out my mouth the way that I want it to. So it's hard to listen to because it's like, that's not really what I was meaning there. And
because you remember what you were trying to say. So as you're listening back to yourself, you remember what you were trying to say and you see how it's getting out and you're like,
right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I worked with a girl who said, all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it annoyed the heck out of me, but it was like, you know what I mean? But she said, you know what I mean? After everything. And I was like, wow, she just can't stop saying that. And now I'm like, I guess I do it. It was good for me to listen to it. I mean, it was painful, but my wife said, and my wife is a very honest critic. She said, no, that was pretty good. So she's like, you tend to ramble. And I thought that's a fair observation. I do tend to ramble on. But it was good. It's a really good exercise. It's very unique. I don't know when I would ever do that.
Yeah.
Listen to myself.
When I was in graduate school, they were teaching us the methods of ethnography to like do participant observation, because the idea of a folklorist is like you go to wherever there's a group of people that has traditions and you study them and you record them and you interview them. And so they taught us all of these interview techniques. And one of the first things I did, there were people in Bloomington, Indiana around Easter time that would put up not Christmas, but Easter eggs on their trees outside. So it was like these egg trees, whatever they call Easter trees. And so I would go up to their house if they had an Easter tree and knock on the door and say, hey, could I interview you about that? Could you tell me about this? And so I have my tape recorder and I've got all these recordings of me doing it. And I realized when I started going back and transcribing those interviews, I had the same reaction that you just described. I'm like hearing myself, I'm like, why did I ask that question? Or the biggest thing that I realized is that in real time, I was so busy trying to think about what I wanted to say next that I wasn't really listening to what the person was saying. And so when I listened back to it, I got so much more out of it. And then obviously doing podcasting like I've been doing for the last 10 years and listening to myself a lot and editing, doing all of that stuff, it really is valuable. So I'm glad you had that uncomfortable experience, and I'm glad that you found it valuable.
Yeah, no, it's great. I'm just curious, did you lose the cringe factor listening to your voice eventually?
No, I still have it.
Really?
There's still times, Cammy will tell you that there's times where I go, oh, I had this great episode or something like that. Do you want to listen to it? And we'll start listening to it. And I'll just be like, okay, I got to turn this off. I can't hear me say another stupid thing. Like, yeah. So that self-critical part has not gone away completely, but I have learned a lot about myself for sure. As a result of that. Yeah. So I'm glad you had that experience, Reed. So what other insights, when we talked last week, I remember you talked a lot about being a 9 on the Enneagram, and you talked, I mean, that was a really important realization, I think, to like understand your role with like wanting peace. Do you put yourself first? Do you put your other people first? How did that awareness impact your week last week?
It had a big impact because when you're aware of something, you really step outside yourself and monitor yourself, kind of like listening to yourself.
Yeah.
And so, for example, I was reading the book or listening to the book, Letting Go by David Hawkins. And it was like a funny, weird thing that happened to me. Is this, whenever I read something like that is really deep and really profound, and it changes the way I think. So like I'm stepping out of the shower thinking like, okay, what do I do here? So I'm not going on the program. We operate on these programs where we're just doing things automatic. Like that's my job.
Yeah.
I'm just repeating the same thing over and over sometimes. And it was kind of like I was re-examining everything from a third person's point of view, kind of like what Alan Watts talks about, the I know that I know that I know, the fact that you can kind of monitor yourself from like this third person. And it was, every conversation I was examining, every, especially work-wise, it was a heavy, just Monday, a really heavy, emotional, where I was refereeing these two individuals. One was my employee and one was a different, in a different department, and just having this big disagreement, and this half-hour meeting turned into an hour and a half of just emotion, and it was very tense. And the whole time I'm kind of monitoring myself during that whole thing, and trying to observe what I'm doing to help, or so whenever I read something like as deep as a book like that, it rocks my world for a while, because I don't do a lot of that type of reading or thinking, where it was definitely one of those, I wouldn't say, it was like a self-help book. I think that's fair to say, but
for sure.
Yeah. But it was, honestly, the last time I have read a self-help book might have been like 7 Habits of Highly Effective People in college or something. Because most of my life was concentrated on the scriptures have all the answers, right? That's what's going to help you be a better person. That's what's going to, so reading anything outside of the, like the standard works, or even just general conference talks or whatever it might be, I didn't really ever go there because I didn't have time to go there. I didn't really, there'd been times where I read like business type managerial books, I would say, but reading a book like Letting Go was a really, really good exercise for me. It was a bit of a rock your world type of exercise, though. Instead of sitting down at night watching TV with my wife, which is what we usually do, we usually go through a series together or whatever. And I didn't. I was focused on reading this book and getting through this book. Part of it is just there's a little bit of pressure here. I'm trying to come to these meetings with something to work through and something to kind of recognize in myself. And
so you read the entire book this last week?
I listened to it.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. That is a lot of information to take in one week.
Well, honestly, that's about how much I'm taking in usually.
It's like a fire hose, drinking out of a fire hose.
I had 863 minutes for the week of exercise. I only know that because we had to submit it for this little contest we're doing at work. But most of the time I'm listening to podcasts, or I'm listening to books, or I'm listening to, there's something in me that really wants to figure things out.
Yeah.
And I've always been like that, whatever it was, whether it was the gospel, I was that guy. And honestly, that's what set my faith transition in motion. Was you kind of get exhausted with kind of just those primary answers. And so I really didn't know where else to turn except, I'm going to go listen to all of the conference talks from the year I was born.
Yeah.
And so I started doing that, and 4 years in, it just blew my mind how wrong everything was. And just how I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Like, this is what they, there's nothing what they're saying is hardly true. It's like, I could go on and on about some of the examples that I heard of, them referring to the sons of Cain in 1982. This is like 4 years after the revelation. Like, it was crazy. And that's what set my whole faith crisis in motion was, there's something going on here and I need to figure this out. This is not right.
Yeah.
And so that curiosity, that desire to kind of understand, has been good. But sometimes I get kind of caught up in it. Like, I need to just sometimes sit down with some music and relax.
Yeah, that's true.
Which sometimes I do. Like, I was at the gym and I was listening to the book, and I'm at the point in the book, where they're talking about, reflexology, or I don't know, some of that stuff that I think is a little frou-frou, and I just shut it down and played some Weezer and just went crazy on the elliptical machine because I couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, I want to go back to what you said, Reed, about awareness. Like the awareness of the things that you were saying, the awareness, like you said something about, like, when you got out of the shower, you had some awareness of what was it that?
Yeah, it was, I'm opening the shower door and thinking, okay, what do I do next? What would the right thing to do next? Which was dumb. I mean, why would I think that? But it was almost like I was being overly mindful about everything and not going by the program, but like looking at myself and thinking, what's the right thing to do here, according to kind of what I was reading, because there's a lot in that book. I mean, that book is, I think you'd have to read that book like 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
To absorb it all, because it was a little much. It was really,
it's a lot. It's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I still listen back. I mean, I probably have listened to it 3 or 4 times, and it's kind of like going to the temple, Reed. You get something new.
I will say there was some things in that book that were a little not triggering, but they were just things where it's like, I can't go there.
Yeah.
It was, and I can't really explain. It's just things that don't make a lot of sense to me, or things that are making claims on things without much evidence, whether it's energy levels. And he kept talking about that 400, you got 250 energy level, I don't know what that means, So there was things where I was like really overly skeptical, so I was cautiously loving the book the whole time, just trying to take it all in, but at the same time be skeptical enough to know that, when he described, honestly, when he got to the point of describing an orgasm, I was
like the tantric kind of, when you just you smile and you just breathe big.
Yeah. And then you're experiencing orgasms outside yourself. And I felt at that point, like, are we getting to like into some snake oil stuff? This is the level that this is curing all your ailments. And then also all these other things. I had to be skeptical about that stuff, because I have a hard time believing a lot of it now.
Yeah. No, I had the same reaction too. Like those like the kinesthesiology, this idea that if you push down on your arms and it goes down, that then it's not
I've
true.
had that done. Have you ever had that done?
No. Like my experience the first time I read this book was there was so much about it that I loved. And then there would be those little things in there that I'm like, oh, don't do that, because it's going to discredit everything. It's like the one bad apple in the card, then it just ruins everything. And so but overall, it's really the first half of that book where he goes through all of those different emotions, and he gives these numbers, assigns these numbers to them, but the principle behind it, like if you're just saying that there are certain emotions that are really, really draining, they just exhaust you, and they're things like grief and shame and apathy and fear, like that, okay, I don't need you to tell me that they're number 45 out of 1,000, or like whatever that arbitrary number system is, but I can go, okay, yeah, I can feel that I am more drained when I'm feeling depressed,
I mean, it's called deep rest, right?
Yeah.
Whereas if I'm above that level of courage, which he puts at 200, then I start feeling like energized and, like I can really feel a difference there. And, so I did find definitely a value in that. And I think that's what I'd like to focus on with you tonight, or wherever you want to focus, Reed, in your intake form. When I asked you to do a self-assessment of where you thought that you were, you put neutrality, because you said, I tend to do things so that I don't upset anyone else. A lot of my motivation seems to be tied up to this desire to not let things bother me or that fill me with anxiety and distress. I want to sleep at night. And when I asked you where you want to be, you said love. I feel like it would allow me to see others as they are and accept them as a whole person, flaws and all. It's a good starting point for being in a place of passion and acceptance. As a peace-loving person, love seems to be the answer to quiet my mind and joyfully be in the presence of others.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of...
That's beautiful, by the way, whatever I wrote.
It is beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. Let's pause for a moment and celebrate it for real. But so I kind of want to keep these sessions where you want it to go.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to check in with you. How are you doing with this quest to be in more of a place of acceptance and love and peace?
This week, I think because I've been so mindful of everything that I've been doing, it's been a really good start.
Mm-hmm.
The meeting, the really tense meeting that I had on Monday, I was a little surprised how well I came out of it after the emotions that came out, and there's just a big misunderstanding, and there's just a lot of things that really don't have easy answers. And normally I would have probably not slept well that night. But I was so excited to, I guess, examine myself during that meeting, or something happened to where one emotion kind of swallowed the other.
Interesting. Which emotion swallowed which emotion?
I would say that's a great question, because it was the emotion of showing love or showing resolve towards the two individuals that were arguing. And I knew that in the end we were going to end up in a good place. And so I felt pretty good. And I realized that I think that's the key to me overcoming this discomfort that I always feel. I have to overcome the discomfort with the kind of this faith type of desire. I don't know how else to describe it. I'm going to hate listening to this again, but there's like this desire to overcome that. Geez, I can't even describe it.
It's because you're trying so hard not to say,
Yeah, I am trying, and I'm doing a really good job.
You are,
Here, let me give you an example of what I'm saying here. And I think about this experience a lot. I have certain phobias. I think we all have some sort of phobias. And one of them is the fear of ocean water, dark ocean water, especially. But growing up as a kid, saw Jaws, saw piranhas. I am scared to death of falling into the ocean. And I just feel like, and when I was doing triathlons back in the day, there wasn't a day where I would swim in the lake and not experience extreme anxiety. And I'd see something at the bottom of the lake and I'd immediately start freaking out, thinking it was some monster. I don't know why. And I think this is a common thing, because I've talked to a lot of people that have swam in lakes, and they're like, oh yeah, I have that same fear, because I think we all grew up watching those horrible movies where, piranhas would come out of nowhere and start eating you. So I had this fear of ocean water and getting in the ocean. It's not something I really wanted to do. But then when I went to Maui, there was something in me that was so wanting to explore the reefs and see the fish. And I didn't even think about that fear.
Yeah.
it was completely swallowed up in this desire to explore, which I have a huge desire to do. And it was, I kind of always think back, like, what happened? What, it was a great experience. It was like, wow, I didn't even have the fear going in the ocean water like I thought I would. And I really enjoyed it on top of it. It was an amazing experience. It was almost life-changing in terms of the experiences that you have snorkeling, I think, because it's just so peaceful and amazing.
And I remember you talking about that before as well, and how clear, like crystal clear, everything seemed while you were in there.
Yeah, it was normally looking down in the depths of the sea to where things start disappearing I would have thought that would have just scared, the heck out of me.
Yeah.
And but it wasn't. I kept looking down because I was so fascinated by what was going to emerge out of the deep, because everything was actually extremely peaceful.
Yeah.
So that experience taught me that there's a way to overcome my discomfort by allowing a more powerful desire to overcome it. A more powerful emotion, or I don't know what it is. What is that? An emotion or some sort of
well, I'm going to use the word clarity, Reed, and let me tell you what I'm hearing in what you're saying here. I mean, first of all, you were trying to explain that feeling that you had while you were refereeing these coworkers, and you couldn't quite put some words into it. So you said, let me tell you this story, and you started by telling me how freaked out you've been by seeing jaws, seeing piranhas, and anything in the ocean. And the way that you described it was, it's dark, it's murky, you can't see anything in there. So there's that, at least the way that I heard it seemed like that there's something about the unknown in that it's frightening, because you've already got these images in your head of jaws and piranhas and whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then when you're in Maui and you're snorkeling and you can see everything so clearly, you did feel peace. And so I'm wondering if there's a connection between the murkiness versus the clarity, and especially if you take that back to that experience that you had with your coworkers, that in the past you might have only been focusing on their disagreements, and as a 9, you don't want people to disagree, and so there's a lot of like fear and what's going to happen in this situation. You just didn't really know, kind of this murky ocean type of setting. Whereas this time, as you were being more aware and you were focusing on kind of what you wanted to come out of it, that you wanted it to be a peaceful resolve, that you had more clarity in your mind about what your intention was as refereeing this. And having that clarity in your mind was kind of akin to snorkeling and seeing all of these fish around you, and really having this, oh wow, this is going on, rather than it being kind of murky and uncertain.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that analogy? I just pulled
I
out
like
your
that a
story
lot.
to read.
No, I like that a lot. I think
it's not a tree that's losing leaves and then you get to see the vista in the background.
No,
but I tried. I tried.
No, it's not. But you said it pretty well. And I think also, thinking back on it, I would have been at a much lower energy level in that. I would have been fearful in that meeting. I would have been, I would have had that anxiety from the fear of people not liking each other. And instead, I think I approached that meeting with, as it was happening, with much higher levels of something, of energy. Yeah, there was an optimism. There was a love for both people, because I really do like both people. And just kind of a faith that we're going to work this out. In the end, 6 months down the road, this isn't going to be an issue, and we're going to figure this out. And each person is they're very unique. They're very strong-willed people, very assertive, which was great, because that's what needed to happen in the meeting. Was feelings had to be discussed, and normally that would have freaked me out. It would have been hard to see the pain in people's faces, but it was really good experience. And maybe because I'm focusing so much on it, I'm focusing on trying to overcome it so much, that maybe that's why. And one of the worries that I have with this whole process is when you read something like that, it's in your brain and you focus on it, but then over time you kind of lose that focus. I don't know if you ever have this, like
Sure.
I just read a book called Breathe, about breathing right, and extremely fascinating book. Me and my wife are doing these breathing exercises at night. I'm trying to do all, and then it just kind of peters out because it's not in the front of your brain anymore. It's not, taking your attention. It's not. And so you just kind of forget about it. And you don't, that habit kind of goes away pretty quick because it's consumed by other things like this book, let's say, so that's what I'm a little worried about that's why I said, you probably have to read this book multiple times in order to kind of, put it in your life. And not only that, but to understand the darn thing. I couldn't seem to. So there was times I have ADHD, and sometimes I was just like, "What did he just say?" Because it was very, very deep, very saturated.
Yeah.
Stuff.
So I hear that you find the contents of the book quite valuable, and especially because you had read that, these ideas were kind of in the forefront of your mind, so that when you were in this meeting and you were refereeing your employees, you were able to focus on something that you were kind of more actively rather than passively being a part of that refereeing process, which is, if I remember right, you've been told in the past, whether it's this job or other jobs, that you need to be more assertive and you need to speak up more. And you were, in this case, you had an idea, you had that faith that you said that there's going to be a resolution, and that helped provide that outcome in that situation. And so you're recognizing that your focus was sharp because you had been recently reading this book. You're concerned that maybe it'll fall off, kind of like with the Breathe book. What do you? It sounds to me like you don't want that to happen.
No, I would love to be in this mind space for a long time.
Yeah.
And part of it is, after the last session, we talked about meditation. And that was good to to have you say, this is probably what you need to do. If you're looking for peace, Reed, you probably need to start meditating. And I said I wasn't doing it. It was something that I've been meaning to do. And then, my subscription to Sam Harris's Waking Up app expired and they want $100. And I was like, that's too much. But I did start, the poor man's way of meditating is just being very mindful of the sensations of your body.
Yeah.
And I did start doing that. I just on walks, I go on a lot of walks, and I would feel extreme moments of peace on those walks as I was thinking about my feet hitting the ground and feeling the sensations all over my body as I thought about them, even like the top of my ear or, anything. And it was very, very peaceful. And I want to keep doing that and being mindful. The book touched on it. We have these programs that we run and we don't know that we're running them. And I am so guilty of just running programs all the time and just trying to get through the complexity of life in terms of being a father, being, my job, with every aspect, so much of, I realize so much of what I do is just programs, me running programs. And, oh, my wife's feeling this way. Well, I know how to react because I've seen this before and I'm just going to do this. And this always works. And whereas now I'm kind of reassessing and being like, is that the right way to approach the situation?
Well, this is one of the big benefits of mindfulness, what you're describing right now. And it's when you start to raise your awareness of these automatic thoughts and these programs that are going on. And as you get better at recognizing it, then what you actually do for yourself is you create the opportunity to choose something different than you would normally automatically do. Because you can recognize, oh, this is happening again. How do I usually respond? Oh, I usually do it this way. And this is usually the outcome. Is that the outcome I want? No, I want a different outcome. And you can take the things that David Hawkins talks about. And you go, okay, if I respond from a place of shame or guilt, then I'm going to feel a certain way. If I respond from a place of love, I can feel this way. And you start getting to that place where the awareness gives you that more of a choice. And then you can set that intention of where you want it to be and figure out, okay, I want to be more loving. I want to be more accepting. Is this going to get me there or not? And that mindfulness, that awareness, I think it's a crucial first step in being able to do that.
I'm feeling now that it will be for me. And so I'm excited. I'm excited for now doing that. I just don't want to lose the desire to do it or just kind of fall out of it. Like I said, with the breathe habit, because life is right now, it's just really busy. And, you know, there I go. I shouldn't have said that, but there's,
you said,
I did. I said, you know,
that's all right.
Oh man.
Take a drink.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm worried about. And I shouldn't worry about it. You know, whatever happens. But I just feel like I'm making some pretty big changes that are positive, and it's been helpful to, you know, these talks are very helpful for me to kind of, I would be lazy. I would be so lazy because that's what nines are. They're the laziest people around because they, you know, you don't have to do anything, then you're not going to be upset, right? That's the whole thing about them is, and I'm guilty of that most of my life. I mean, I'm not extremely lazy, but
how many triathlons have you run?
Oh, I don't know. I was really into it for
I think if it's at least one or more, you're not allowed to call yourself lazy ever.
Yeah, that was 10 years ago though.
Still.
But yeah, I used to be a sit around kind of homebody type of person, like watching TV, you know. That was what I was. Not anymore. And that's just because I have different habits now. I have, you know, you have friends that, you know, drag you out disc golfing every Friday, which is so fun. Or you have, you know, other friends that are, you know, want to go biking, and, you know, if you have active friends, you're going to be active. So, but you know, in the back of my mind, I'm a little worried, like, okay, this better not be one of those fads that I go through and just drop off later on. I don't think it will. I hope not.
But would you do me a favor and hold your mic out a little? It's kind of like rustling on the collar.
Oh, my collar?
Yeah. Sorry.
I've heard that before.
Yeah. Well, would you like to do a little meditation exercise right now, Reed?
Oh, yeah.
So I can show you how easy it is.
Okay.
So just get into a really comfortable place in your chair and your feet flat on the floor. And whatever breathing you learned in that book, you're just going to like take some really deep breaths in and out. And just keep doing that. And as you breathe out, like feel how good it feels to just like relax.
We should have done this at the beginning of the exercise.
Yeah. Well, we're doing it now in the middle. So just going to be quiet here for a couple of minutes. And I want you to, whatever comes into your mind, just watch it. And then if you want to talk about it afterwards, we can talk about it. Or if you just want to just like chill out and just kind of take a break and let everything kind of like wash over you, just do that. We'll just sit here for a couple minutes. All right, whenever you're ready, tell me a little bit about what that experience was like for you.
Oh, it was a little surprising. That was, I mean, at first I'm a little nervous, obviously, but it took me a little while to kind of calm down. But I think the first real emotion that I felt was gratitude. I feel like I was really hit by, and this is very strange, I know, but just how loved I am. I was surprised that that came through. I think there is a lot of good in this world, and there's people that are really trying to make life better for other people. And I think I thought of, there's certain people that I think we all really enjoy listening to or reading. And for some dumb reason, I don't know why, when I bought the book Letting Go, I also bought Letter to a Christian Nation by Sam Harris.
I love that.
I don't know why I bought it.
Oh, you're talking about Letters to a Christian Nation, Sam Harris. Okay, no, I do love that. I thought you were talking about Letters to the Planet Earth by Mark Twain. Anyway.
Oh, that sounds interesting too.
Yeah.
When I needed a break from letting go, I read that book, and it was actually, it was one of those books where it's like, yeah, get him, Sam, like take it to these guys. But at the same time, he is doing his best to help the world or the nation. I think everyone has, they want to help. They want to really improve things. I put you in that camp. I put so many other people that I listen to. They're just trying to help. They're operating at that high energy of love and peace and all that stuff. And I just was really grateful that those people put the time and effort into doing that sort of thing and trying to resolve these giant issues that I wouldn't even know how to tackle. I shouldn't say but so first I was overcome by some emotion there, and I was a little surprised by that. And then I thought of course, there was like, these people aren't that far away from what, some of the leaders that I've had in my life in the church. They sure meant well. They were sure trying to do their best. They were, with whatever limited information they had. I can't hold it against those individuals. They were operating under a certain understanding that, might be, in my perspective or my opinion, limited, but they were doing a pretty good job of it. And I should be grateful for, their kindness that they showed me. Even if they asked me if I was masturbating when I was a kid, they were doing it out of love.
Yeah.
They thought that really mattered and that would really help me, and I shouldn't judge them. And so I thought about that.
Okay, and let me just pause there for a minute, because I don't want to gloss over this. This is huge. This is huge, Reed. So here's what I'm hearing. I'm because it could be really uncomfortable to say, hey, let's stop what we're doing right now and just meditate. You want to meditate? Let's meditate.
Yeah.
and so you went into it feeling a little nervous, but then you just kind of cleared your mind, you relaxed. And the first, let's go all wooey David Hawkins on this. The first vibration that your mind started creating, because no one was doing anything, it was just you in there.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing that you did was gratitude. Gratitude for people that you listen to that help you. Gratitude for former church leaders. Gratitude for those kinds of experiences in your life. You turned yourself almost immediately, I mean, we did that for less than 5 minutes, into a gratitude machine.
Mm-hmm.
And how did that feel?
Oh, it was powerful. I mean, I was not expecting that at all, what happened. I was a little shocked, and I don't know, it was almost like there was an energy there. And I don't want to say that because I think that sounds kooky.
What sounds kooky?
Just like this sharing of energy, or like I could feel something.
Yeah.
And I mean, I do look up to so many people, and because I'm in the middle of deconstructing. I'm in the middle of trying to figure out who I am, and there are some really awesome people that are helping me.
I got to tell you, Reed, Sam Harris is still in the middle of trying to figure out who he is. I'm still in the middle of trying to figure out how I am. Everybody's like in this process of growing, you yourself. And I really don't want to gloss over this. I know it can feel a little weird to call it energies, but pick a different word, emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Those were emotions that you created, right?
Right.
I mean, they're not coming from anywhere else, and we're not claiming that there's like some supernatural woo thing outside of you. These are thoughts that came to you that were expressing themselves as emotions of gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I don't know for sure, but I think that your experience on Monday with your coworkers was something similar, where you inside of yourself, there's all of this stuff that's going on around you, that their heated arguments, whatever that, and you inside are creating this space of gratitude, of peace, because that's what you want as a 9. You want peace. And I think that what you're doing is learning how to create that inside of yourself and just project that outwards. Right. Instead of expecting that peace to be in the world out there, and you're okay if it's out there, but if it's not, then you're going to run and hide or do whatever you do. You're like, I can create this. I can create this inside of myself. I can share it with others, that peacefulness. But first, it's right there in you. And just the fact that of all of the things, like we read that David Hawkins thing, there's all kinds of emotions and different vibrations of energy, if you really want to get nuts on there, that you could have gone to. And where did you first go? You went to gratitude. That is really encouraging to me.
Mm-hmm.
So
good.
I think that's awesome.
Well, I was not expecting it. In fact, I was a little worried, like, what if I come out of this and there's nothing? What am I going to say?
Nothing can be quite peaceful too. I went to a meditation class a couple of years ago, and it was kind of triggering for me because it was this woman named Carol Whitaker. I interviewed her on the podcast back in 2018. And she talked about meditation, and that's why I went to her class after I did that interview with her. But what she said is, okay, when you're sitting here and you're focusing your attention inward, focus on God. I'm like, but I don't believe in God. Don't talk about God. I don't want to hear about God. It's like, focus on God. And so I started thinking, well, what do I believe? Like, instead of focusing on God, what can I focus on? Well, I'm just going to focus on the air around. I'm going to focus on there's atoms in the air around me. There's atoms inside of me. There's atoms everywhere. Like, that's energy. I can focus on that. And that's kind of like, I don't know if that's the genesis of bathing with God, but I started thinking about like, oh, okay, I'm surrounded by this energy, and it's all of this like active, intelligent, like at every level, whether it's an atom or it's a molecule or it's a cell, there's all of this intelligence communication that's going on around me that I'm never aware of. I'm never even thinking about it. But here I'm in this like meditative, peaceful place and kind of like thinking about that around me. And it just was so transformative. Like even within maybe a couple of weeks of practicing this at home, I was with my family, my brother and sister and my mom. And it can be a rowdy group sometimes, especially my younger brother. He likes messing with me, maybe because I like messing with him. But anyway, we're sitting in this room, and I decide I'm just going to meditate while there's all this chaos going around me. So I'm sitting on the couch, just kind of like stoic, got my eyes closed. I'm not moving. And he starts coming over like he's going to hit me, or, like all the stuff. And I'm like, okay, now it's going to be this battle of wills, because you're not going to make me blink. You're not going to make me. And I just sat there and I meditated for like 10 minutes, and there wasn't anything that he could do to make me laugh. And it just felt like this really cool power that I had discovered of like finding this inner peace inside of me. I really liked it. Anyway.
I could use that with the kids.
Yeah, right. Or in any situation. Like I've found that, like, if I'm supposed to meet somebody and they're late, in the past, I would have been like so annoyed and just kind of like impatient. But now I'm like, okay, well, I've got some time to just kind of like sit here and turn my brain off, turn all of that chatter off, just focus on like, what are the sounds in the environment around me? Like, are there birds? Is there traffic? Like what are the, and I just kind of like lose myself in that moment. And it's really peaceful and blissful, where before it was just like that murkiness of thought that like cloud, like my mind is generating that murky water, that murky ocean water that maybe Jaws is in, and I don't have that clarity. But there's something about meditating and really focusing on the sounds that are around me, wherever it is, even if it's just complete silence, that just really feels clear and energizing and peaceful. So, well, I appreciate that you were willing to do that little experiment with me, and I'm glad that you had a good experience with it. And I'm not going to let you
really
say
good.
anymore that you don't have time to meditate, because that was less than 5 minutes, and you saw the power of it.
It's crazy how it doesn't take very much time, or the fact that I'm doing something and I just decide, why not meditate right now while I'm walking, or
Yeah.
and those have been actually the better experiences that I've had.
Yeah.
We have to take this crazy puppy dog that we have on these long walks, and yeah, it's been one of those kind of times where it's just complete peace.
Yeah.
To just think about what I'm doing, every step that I take.
Yeah.
When do you ever do that?
Yeah.
And so it's been good.
Yeah.
I will say, I just want to share something with you, that I had a dream. I don't have many dreams about that, but this, and I think because I've been focused on meditating, in my dream I decided, I need to meditate. And in the dream I was meditating, and it worked so well that I found myself in this space, floating inside of myself. But it was weird, and I'm trying to figure out, or maybe understand, what was going on here. But the reason that I was floating is because I was caught between two almost magnetic poles that were like this tension. And if I could find the exact middle there, I could levitate, and I was kind of spinning in this free space.
Wow.
And I've been thinking about what the heck that means. And is there some sort of poles that I need to be trying to find myself in, to where I'm not gravitating one way or another? What are those poles or whatever? But there's something there, and I keep thinking about it, because I thought it meant something. I'm just not sure yet.
What do you think it means?
I don't know. It was like the only thing I could compare it to was, there's a space within, where it's in between your ego and your kind of your unconscious brain. And as long as I could dwell in that space, I was in this kind of perfect equilibrium, and at complete peace, and just, it was like nirvana. That's the only way I could think of, just like this. Okay, this is what nirvana must feel like, just floating. And so I don't know what it was. I'm still trying to figure it out, but I think there was something there.
Yeah, that's really cool. So you said a space between your ego and your unconscious brain?
Yeah, I don't know how to describe it, but there was some I had to find the space between the tension, or between those poles. I couldn't go all the way into one or the other without it me floating.
Yeah,
I had to find the exact right balance.
I'm kind of picturing like magnets, like
that's
the kind of like the poles of a mag, like if you put it right there, and it's kind of like being held in place. And it seems like what you're saying is, and I really like this interpretation. So this is my interpretation of what you're saying, that whatever you're calling ego, or whatever, there might be some kind of a conflict that's out here, and then there's something that you're in between, you're still aware of it. So it's not like you're burying your head in the sand and pretending that it's not there. You're finding like a balance point between that and something else that you called like the unconscious.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's almost like you're still aware. You're aware of both of them.
Mm-hmm.
But you're finding that place of balance. I don't know. I'll think about that some more. That's really cool.
Yeah. You're the more experienced meditator. I was thinking maybe you'd have somewhere to go with that, but
Hey, I have no expertise when it comes to what's going on in your mind.
yeah, that's probably true.
None. And so, like, if you're having a dream, your interpretation of what it means, I'm going to trust way more than anything that I think is going on with it. I'll tell you
Maybe it
that.
was just motivation for me to continue trying and try to figure out what, because you hear the stories of Buddha, all of these, all these great meditators, these spiritual leaders that seem to go in that state of nirvana, and they're able to do it, without any sort of psychedelic or anything like that, where they are in that space. And I'm fascinated by that.
Yeah.
To imagine being able to do that on your own and just go into this kind of magical world, of peace and joy and love and all that stuff is definitely something that fascinates me.
Yeah.
I just have a little faith that I'll ever get there for some reason.
Well, do you have more faith this week than you did last week?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Good.
I think so.
And it sounds like you have a desire to be there, because you certainly don't want things to just drop off and go back to, old habits where you forget the things that you've been doing this past week.
Right.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Well, I have this sense that sort of peace is possible when we clear our minds of all the gunk, and I won't go into all of it, but I have experiences that certainly in the past would have really, really triggered me. It would have gotten me defensive. And like for me, when I get defensive, I can get really sarcastic and, like say cutting comments to Cammie or like my mom or, something like that. I might talk about my sister and I might say something that's like really sarcastic that just kind of hurts her feelings, because I'm operating from some place that I feel threatened, and so I lash out in that way. And mindfulness has helped me, like I talked about earlier, that awareness where you have choices. Like I recognize, oh, this is the time where I would kind of say something, and I just pull back and I don't. And there is a lot of peace that I find just in changing my own behavior in that way. So these people that you're looking at with admiration, gurus, yogis, whatever you said, I think that's what goes on. I think it's that kind of mastery of mind where they're not filling, their head isn't filled with all of these stories, assumptions, beliefs, cognitive distortions that distort reality. There's a clarity and an appreciation and a gratitude for where they are. And that gratitude is kind of that balance between the things that are going on, that maybe that's the what you dreamt about is finding that balance and that equanimity in there. So
I love what you said about being mindful of what you're telling Cammie or your family or whatever, because that happened to me, I think it was yesterday.
Yeah.
Where I had the perfect opportunity to say something to my wife that would have been, in the past I would have said it, and I would have thought it was funny, and she probably wouldn't have.
Yeah.
Because I know my wife, and she would have been hurt by it. But I couldn't help but think of when you said that, Jerry Garcia said that the most important notes are the ones he doesn't play on the guitar, that you can't overplay when you're playing a solo or whatever. And I think that's the same with us. I have to be more mindful of the things that I don't say instead of what I'm saying, because there's times where I want to say something because I'm a natural, I'm kind of like you. Sarcasm is my worst enemy. And sometimes it's just so easy to say something. But when you hold that back, there's also some power there to like say, wow, I have control over myself to not say certain dumb things.
And it's funny because it's not, it's not that I hold it back in the sense that I repress it. Like I recognize, like I give myself a nice chuckle inside. I just don't have to share it with others because like I recognize it. I know what the impact's going to be if I say it. So yeah, anyway, I don't want to belabor that point. So we're at the top of the hour, Reed. What do you want to work on this upcoming week? What do you want to take in like your homework for this week?
That's a good question. I think I mentioned in there that I wanted to be more present with people. I have a major problem in my head, and it's I think driven by ADHD. And my kids have complained about it, where they're talking to me and I'm in outer space because it's just I want to think about other things or whatever. And so there's times where I just need to work on being present with people and listening and not feeling like I need to insert something to make sure that they know I'm listening, that they know I'm smart and I'm going to contribute. You know what I'm saying? I realize that's a big problem in my life. And the fact that they've expressed that to my wife, it worries me a little bit and makes me kind of think that, I have some work to do.
All right. So is this specifically then with your kids that you want to focus on?
Yeah, but it's with everything, I always say, listening is a serious problem that I have. I tend to drift off in thought very easily. It's not something that I can really help all that much. I've tried medication before and I hated it. It just made me feel antsy and I couldn't sleep at night. And
sure.
It's one of those things that I will have to figure out at some point.
Yeah.
How to listen, how to control my brain. And I don't know if I'll ever get to be able to do it. But it's something that I need to work on. And I think that meditation is going to help.
It is. Yeah. And so here's two things that I'm going to suggest for you for this week. If you're up for reading another book.
Oh, yeah.
This book, Inner Size. I've talked about it a few times on the podcast.
Yeah, I think I've heard you say it. Yeah.
Hold it up right now for you so you can see what it looks like.
Okay.
So Inner Size. Yeah, it's Inner Size, The New Science to Unlock Your Brain's Hidden Power by John Assaraf. And what you're talking about specifically is focus. And the reason the book is called Inner Size is because, how to get your brain buff the way that you would your body buff with exercise. How to, like you might want to go to the gym and focus on your arms one day or focus on your legs one day or, like focus on these different areas of your body. You can do that with your brain with different cognitive skills like focus. And that's what you're saying, that you find yourself drifting off when people are talking. You start thinking about something else and then you find, I just missed that. So there's exercises that he presents in this book that you can do to strengthen that skill. Meditation is one of them. There's other things. So that's one thing I would suggest for this week is reading through Inner Size, getting aware of that. And then the other thing would be when you're having a conversation with your kids, and maybe just start by focusing on your kids. As soon as they finish, restate to them what they just said to you. And I do that with you while we're doing this coaching. I'll say, here's what I'm hearing you say. And I mirror back to you what it is that you're telling me. And how do you feel when I do that?
All right. No. Oh, are you asking me?
Yeah.
Oh, it feels like you're definitely listening to what I'm saying and you're understanding where I'm coming from. Because usually when you repeat it back, I say, I agree that, you've stated what and sometimes you say it better than I could have said.
And sometimes I leave things out. And sometimes I say something back to you that isn't really what you meant. And then you can kind of correct with it too. But
Right.
But that's another skill that you can develop. And so I would recommend those two things, the inner size, and then practice with your kids restating what they say to you, and just say, I mean, you can do it in any way you feel most comfortable. Here's what I'm hearing you say. You're telling me that this is important to you. You're telling me, and you just kind of like summarize it back to them and see how well you do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I will try that for sure.
Yeah.
It's definitely not a habit that I have.
Yeah.
And that's probably because I can't do it. I don't know what they said. I mean, it has to really, for the kids, they have such different interests than I do.
Mm-hmm.
They're kind of in that world of friends or sports or, and I enjoy sports but yeah, sometimes it's just hard to listen to teenagers talk about themselves because it's usually video games. I don't care. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But it's a good, I think this is a great idea.
Well, and maybe you don't care about the video games, and maybe you don't even really care about the friends, but you do care about your kids, or you wouldn't have brought this up as something that you want to work on. So learning how to just restate, this is what you're telling me. Well, like you might, like when I've got a 17-year-old son who loves playing video games too, and he'll tell me all about them, and I don't know what he's talking about. I have no idea. I don't even know if I could restate everything that he's saying, because he's talking about like these words and names that I just don't have any frame of reference for. Practice that, and then next week we'll talk again. We'll see how it went.
Yeah, I love this. This is great.
Good. All right.
Put down the weapons that you use against yourself. You don't need them anymore.
Hey there, thanks for listening all the way to the end. Now, I really hope that you enjoyed today's episode. I have more to say about this topic, and I'm going to do that with a follow-up behind-the-scenes sharing time episode on Patreon. So, if you're in a position where you can throw me a few dollars each month to support the work that I put into creating this podcast, please come and support me on Patreon, where you'll also get access to additional content. Did you know that I also create sharing time episodes that are available only to Patreon subscribers? I've been doing that for a few years, so there's a lot of content there that you can have access to. So please come and support this podcast if you can. I greatly appreciate it.
Hi, this is Hillary.
Matthew.
Ryan.
Carol.
Keith.
Ashley. And I like to play bingo online while listening to Infants on Thrones.
You can comment on this episode on the website, infantsonthrones.com.
And if you really like what you hear, give the Quorum a 5-star rating and write a short review on iTunes.
I did. Anyone for the closing prayer?
My worst crime is an inside job. Dark thoughts taking over like an inside mob. I tune into the scene between the eyes and take a breath.
Thank you for listening to Infants on Thrones.
I sit still and watch the thoughts float past me. Never mind the future, never mind what the past be. I like to jump and let the universe catch me. Free fall, watch the beauty blow past me. I keep my pockets light, destination in sight. Keep my actions elevated to compassionate heights. I'm walking past the fight, laying down on Sunday night. Choosing love when I pick up this mic. So we can make love, not war.
The mechanism of letting go. What is it? Letting go is like the sudden cessation of an inner pressure, or the dropping of a weight. It is accompanied by a sudden feeling of relief and lightness, with an increased happiness and freedom. It is an actual mechanism of the mind, and everyone has experienced it on occasion. A good example is the following. You are in the midst of an intense argument. You are angry and upset, when suddenly the whole thing strikes you as absurd and ridiculous. You start to laugh. the pressure is relieved. You come up from anger, fear, and feeling attacked to feeling suddenly free and happy. Think how great it would be if you could do that all of the time, in any place and with any event. You could always feel free and happy, and never be cornered by your feelings again. That's what this technique is all about. Letting go consciously and frequently at will. You are then in charge of how you feel, and you are no longer at the mercy of the world and your reactions to it. You are no longer the victim. This is employing the basic teaching of the Buddha, which removes the pressure of involuntary reactivity. We carry around with us a huge reservoir of accumulated negative feelings, attitudes, and beliefs. The accumulated pressure makes us miserable and is the basis of many of our illnesses and problems. We are resigned to it and explain it away as the human condition. We seek to escape from it in myriad ways. The average human life is spent trying to avoid and run from the inner turmoil of fear and the threat of misery. Everyone's self-esteem is constantly threatened, both from within and without. If we take a close look at human life, we see that it is essentially one long, elaborate struggle to escape our inner fears and expectations that have been projected upon the world. Interspersed are periods of celebration when we have momentarily escaped the inner fears, but the fears are still there waiting for us. We have become afraid of our inner feelings because they hold such a massive amount of negativity that we fear we would be overwhelmed by it if we were to take a deeper look. We have a fear of these feelings because we have no conscious mechanism by which to handle the feelings if we let them come up within ourselves. Because we are afraid to face them, they continue to accumulate, and finally, we secretly begin looking forward to death to bring all of the pain to an end. It is not thoughts or facts that are painful, but the feelings that accompany them. Thoughts, in and of themselves, are painless, but not the feelings that underlie them. It is the accumulated pressure of feelings that causes thoughts. One feeling, for instance, can create literally thousands of thoughts over a period of time. Think, for instance, of one painful memory from early life, one terrible regret that has been hidden. Look at all the years and years of thoughts associated with that single event. If we could surrender the underlying painful feeling, all of those thoughts would disappear instantly, and we would forget the event. This observation is in accord with scientific research. The Gray-LaViolette scientific theory integrates psychology and neurophysiology. Their research demonstrated that feeling tones organize thoughts and memory. Thoughts are filed in the memory bank according to the various shades of feelings associated with those thoughts. Therefore, when we relinquish or let go of a feeling, we are freeing ourselves from all of the associated thoughts. The great value of knowing how to surrender is that any and all feelings can be let go of at any time and any place in an instant. And it can be done continuously and effortlessly. What is the surrendered state? It means to be free of negative feelings in a given area so that creativity and spontaneity can manifest without opposition or the interference of inner conflicts. To be free of inner conflict and expectations is to give others in our life the greatest freedom. It allows us to experience the basic nature of the universe, which, it will be discovered, is to manifest the greatest good possible in a situation. This may sound philosophical, but when done, it is experientially true. Feelings and mental mechanisms. We have three major ways of handling feelings: suppression, expression, and escape. We will discuss each in turn. 1. Suppression and repression. These are the most common ways in which we push feelings down and put them aside. In repression, this happens unconsciously. In suppression, it happens consciously. We don't want to be bothered by feelings, and besides, we don't know what else to do with them. We sort of suffer through them and try to keep functioning as best as we can. The feelings that we select to be suppressed or repressed are in accord with the conscious and unconscious programs that we carry within us from social custom and family training. The pressure of suppressed feelings is later felt as irritability, mood swings, tension in the muscles of the neck and back, headaches, cramps, menstrual disorders, colitis, indigestion, insomnia, hypertension, allergies, and other somatic conditions. When we repress a feeling, it is because there is so much guilt and fear over the feeling that it is not even consciously felt at all. It becomes instantly thrust into the unconscious as soon as it threatens to emerge. The repressed feeling is then handled in a variety of ways to ensure that it stays repressed and out of awareness. Of these mechanisms used by the mind to keep the feeling repressed, denial and projection are perhaps the best-known methods, as they tend to go together and reinforce each other. Denial results in major emotional and maturational blocks. It is usually accompanied by the mechanism of projection. Because of guilt and fear, we repress the impulse or feeling, and we deny its presence within us. Instead of feeling it, we project it onto the world and those around us. We experience the feeling as if it belonged to them. They then become the enemy, and the mind searches for and finds justification to reinforce the projection. Blame is placed on people, places, institutions, food, climatic conditions, astrological events, social conditions, fate, God, luck, the devil, foreigners, ethnic groups, political rivals, and other things outside of ourselves. Projection is the main mechanism in use by the world today. It accounts for all wars, strife, and civil disorder. Hating the enemy is even encouraged in order to become a good citizen. We maintain our own self-esteem at the expense of others, and eventually this results in social breakdown. The mechanism of projection underlies all attack, violence, aggression, and every form of social destruction. Two, expression. With this mechanism, the feeling is vented, verbalized, or stated in body language and acted out in endless group demonstrations. The expression of negative feelings allows just enough of the inner pressure to be let out so that the remainder can then be suppressed. This is a very important point to understand, for many people in society today believe that expressing their feelings frees them from the feelings. The facts are to the contrary. The expression of a feeling, first, tends to propagate that feeling and give it greater energy. Second, the expression of the feeling merely allows the remainder to be suppressed out of awareness. The balance between suppression and expression varies in each individual depending on early training, current cultural norms and mores, and the media. Expressing oneself is now in vogue as a result of a misunderstanding of the work of Sigmund Freud and psychoanalysis. Freud pointed out that suppression was the cause of neurosis. Therefore, expression was mistakenly thought to be the cure. This misinterpretation became a license for self-indulgence at the cost of others. What Freud actually said in classical psychoanalysis was that the repressed impulse or feeling was to be neutralized, sublimated, socialized, and channeled into constructive drives of love, work, and creativity. If we dump our negative feelings on others, they experience it as an attack, and they in turn are forced to suppress, express, or escape the feelings. Therefore, the expression of negativity results in the deterioration and destruction of relationships. A far better alternative is to take responsibility for our own feelings and neutralize them into constructive drives of love, work, and creativity. Then, only positive feelings remain to be expressed. 3. Escape. Escape is the avoidance of feelings through diversion. This avoidance is the backbone of the entertainment and liquor industries, and also the root of the workaholic. Escapism and avoidance of inner awareness is a socially condoned mechanism. We can avoid our own inner selves and keep our feelings from emerging by an endless variety of pursuits, many of which eventually become addictions as our dependency upon them grows. People are desperate to stay unconscious. We observe how often people flick on the television set the minute they enter a room, and then walk around in a dreamlike state, constantly being programmed by the data poured into them. People are terrified of facing themselves. They dread even a moment of aloneness. Thus, the constant, frantic activities, the endless socializing, talking, texting, reading, music playing, working, traveling, sightseeing, shopping, overeating, gambling, movie-going, pill-taking, drug-using, and cocktail partying. Many of the foregoing mechanisms of escape are faulty, stressful, and ineffective. Each of them requires increasing amounts of energy in and of itself. Enormous amounts of energy are required to keep down the growing pressure of the suppressed and repressed feelings. There is a progressive loss of awareness and an arrest of growth. There is a loss of creativity, energy, and real interest in others. There is a halting of spiritual growth and eventually the development of physical and emotional illness, disease, aging, and premature death. The projection of these repressed feelings results in the social problems, disorders, and the increase of selfishness and callousness characteristic of our present society. Most of all, the effect is the inability to truly love and trust another person, which results in emotional isolation and self-hatred. In contrast to the above, what happens instead when we let go of a feeling? The energy behind the feeling is instantly surrendered, and the net effect is decompression. The accumulated pressure begins to decrease as we constantly let go. Everyone knows that when we let go, we immediately feel better. The body's physiology changes. There are detectable improvements in skin color, breathing, pulse, blood pressure, muscle tension, gastrointestinal function, and blood chemistries. In the state of inner freedom, all bodily functions and organs move in the general direction of normalcy and health. There is an immediate increase in muscle power. Vision improves, and our perception of the world and ourselves changes for the better. We feel happier, more loving, and more easygoing.
When you witness a dark thought that isn't going to get you anywhere, you witness it and love it. You love your dark thoughts. Remember, the witness is part of the soul, and the soul loves everything. Everything, not every being, but everything. Loves the clouds, trees, and the fish, and the animals. And that love coalesces the universe. Oneness of the universe is love.
Thank you for listening to Infants on Thrones.